I know, it's right here. Okay. Okay, we're going to get started in, like, now. uh, we are. We're going to get started right now. I'm going to do some good and welfare first. So I'm going to make the important announcements first, and then we'll begin our program. So the first important announcement is that our Greater Metro West Jewish Federation released at 5:30 the sign-up for the buses for the rally next Tuesday. There will be buses. Yeah, a big clap for Federation. Randy Brockman came in before, and I wanted to remind her that many years ago we did 3 buses from Agudath Israel that we went to a rally, and yes, it was a fun experience, but it's so much nicer that Federation is doing it for us. So we are very pleased that Federation will be subsidizing the buses for us. Tomorrow, our office will be forwarding the email. Many of you probably already got it. The sign-up has to be done by Thursday. When you sign up, it says group that you want to go with your synagogue, and you happily put in Congregation of Agudath Israel. More details of where we're going to park and all that important information will be out there. But it's next Tuesday, November 15th. I believe that we're leaving at 14th, November 5th, 14th. We're leaving at 7, and we'll be back later in the evening. So look for that email. It's really important that we show a good showing. And again, I want to thank Stephanie Bonder, our Israel Committee chairperson, and our whole community, because I know that we're going to fill buses. But Agudath Israel has always been loyal to everything that has to do with Israel and anti-Semitism, etc. So, yay, Agudath Israel. Do it. So look for that email. Another thing is tomorrow night, we have a real honor of Joseph Berger, who wrote the book Elie Wiesel. He will be here tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. We will be having a Kristallnacht commemoration. It will be in our adult lounge. And again, it's an important evening not to miss. So tomorrow at 8 p.m., Joe Berger, the book Elie Wiesel, and a Kristallnacht commemoration. It is a wow moment at Congregation of Agudath Israel because we have so many friends. When everything was going on October 7th, I know many of you contacted me and asked, how are the Silversteins? So that was actually something that we were all thinking about. And thanks to WhatsApp and calling, I was able to report back that the Silversteins were fine. And thank you to Rabbi Silverstein, who also wrote and told us that they were doing fine. But I know that our hearts were all worried about our beloved Silverstein family. So that was important to all of us. In this very room and on Zoom, on the live stream, we have many friends in this community. WEMA, the West Essex Ministerial Association, there's a very big showing of our friends in the neighborhood, of the churches and of the churches, and I think also our friends Nazir from the Turkish Muslim Institute. They are here watching. They might not physically be in this room, but physically in this room, we have friends of WEMA in this very room. So I just want to do a shout out, and I know Rabbi Silverstein will be saying more, to our beloved friends, Reverend Jeff Marquet and Father Anthony. Longtime friends. I know I'm going to get to that. I was getting to Barbara. Longtime friends of Agudath Israel who do not live in the neighborhood anymore and came into the neighborhood because this was so important tonight. So again, yes, another round of applause to Jeff Marquet and to Father Anthony. And in our neighborhood right now is our dear friend Barbara Piercy, who is right over there. Stand up, Barbara. Another important part of WEMA. She's going to be actually a little commercial for our inclement and our interfaith Thanksgiving service that we do. It'll be Tuesday, November 21st, and actually Barbara is behind the scenes making sure that it all happens because it's going to be at St. Pete's, which is right down St. Peter's, right in Essex Fells. So you're going to hear more about that, but thank you, Barbara, for being here tonight. And I know that the sisters are on Zoom. I know it because we got them on the, thank you, Debbie, Lori, for getting our friends, the sisters, on the live stream. So again, Caldwell is with us. Rabbi Silverstein is with us. And again, I want to thank Stephanie Bonder and the Israel Committee. There's when we want to know about what's going on in Israel and to understand it in a more detailed and a really warm way, Rabbi Silverstein is the master of this. So I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Silverstein, who's going to give us an update. And I just want to thank him because, again, this is very meaningful for everybody in this room and everybody on live stream, and it really gives comfort to all of us to have Rabbi Silverstein explain what is going on right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here at home with so many friends, both in person and on live stream. You know, it's a whole new era. When I spoke about the judicial overhaul controversy, we had about 125 people in the room. We had about 150 screens, which is probably close to 200 people. And then the video was watched by almost 300 people. So you add all that together, it's kind of an interesting technological time. And we'll see what happens tonight. I wish I were not talking about this subject, but Sue asked me before we went on our 7-week trip to Israel if I would say a few things when I got back about what's going on. And I never in a million years anticipated what would be going on. The trip was really in 2 parts. The first part was as glorious as you can imagine, and that is the opportunity for Rita and for me to spend all of the fall holidays with our grandchildren. Never happened before. So, you know, because they live in Israel and we've lived here, and you know, we see them all the time, but, you know, I could take vacation time, but generally not for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So being with them was incredible. Rosh Hashanah, welcoming the new year with tremendous joy and hopes for peace and harmony. And, you know, my grandchildren are getting big. The oldest is now 19. The next one is 17. The next one is 14 and a half. The next one is 11. So they're big kids already. And except for the 11-year-old, they are all taller than Rita. So time wasn't on her side. So, but in any event, spending time with them was amazing. Being in Israel for Rosh Hashanah, we were wished Shana Tova, you know, Happy New Year everywhere we went, by all the Jewish folks, by all the Arab folks, the folks who work in the supermarkets, in the healthcare system. Something like 1/3 of the folks in the healthcare system in Israel are Arabs. So when you have to go to Terem, to the clinic, you have these incredibly skilled, trained folks, and they're primarily Arabs. Working in the supermarket, working in civic services, helping out in Jewish homes. So, you know, we have, and also, I mean, this is in the first part of the trip, our daughter-in-law Lisa's parents got divorced years ago. They're both remarried. So her mom is remarried to a rabbi who is 85 years old with 28 grandchildren, 35 great-grandchildren. I mean, this guy is, you know, they celebrated his 85th birthday, and they could not invite any of the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, because where could you go to a restaurant in Israel for that? But in any event, one of his grandchildren is a terrific young woman, brilliant. She's a physician at Hadassah Hospital. And she was explaining to us, prior to the second half of the trip, that among the many patients at Hadassah Hospital are patients who are unable, children, she's a pediatrician, who are unable to be adequately treated in Gaza. And therefore you have folks, Jewish folks, who live at the border between Gaza and Israel, who would escort them, make sure they were properly cared for, to take them to Hadassah Hospital, to other, top-of-the-line hospitals in Israel for treatment and then return them to across the border. So she talked about those relationships. One amusing anecdote of the nature of coexistence in the first month is in Israel sometimes people have a coffee name. Brandy, you know what a coffee name is in Israel? It's yes, but why would you have a coffee name? Sometimes there are certain names that people have, like Alan, that Israelis can't pronounce. It's Ellen, it's all kinds of things. So at a certain point in time, you, out of frustration, you choose another name. So you have a coffee name. So everybody has trouble with that name. One day I went with Rita to the local supermarket, and we go into the market, we're buying stuff before Rosh Hashanah, and I'm buying items, and Rita is getting chicken according to the specifications of our daughter-in-law. And so I got my stuff, and I come over to where Rita's getting chicken. So the butcher behind the counter is an Arab guy, and Rita says to him, Zeb Ali is my husband. So he says, Alan. Well, see, I didn't know that. So I said to Rita, how does he know my name? In Arabic, Alan is how you say hello. So you never know what you're going to find. Interestingly, the holiday of Yom Kippur is, it was a great experience for me, to be with the family for Yom Kippur. But Sukkot was really, for Israel, was bigger because everybody, inexpensively and quickly assembled buys a sukkah. They have their own sukkah everywhere you go. The restaurants have Sukkot. And it's just, there's so much joy and festivity and engagement. So Sukkot was really terrific. And we celebrated the week of Sukkot down to and including, in Israel, you don't have a separate day for Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. It's one day. I made the joke to Lisa's mom, who they just made Aliyah. She just turned 75, and she was born, Jewish date, on Shmini Atzeret. So I said, I know why you made Aliyah. You don't want to age, because Israel doesn't have Shmini Atzeret, so you're never going to age. In any event, that night, the night of Simchat Torah, we went to shul, and it was great, and all the festivities, and the kids, and the dancing, and greatness. And that, we didn't realize, was going to be the end of part one of our most glorious trip to Israel. The next morning, we awakened to sounds of booming. It was strange, but I've been around the block. I realized that the booming was the sound of the Iron Dome, the protecting item for rockets, missiles coming in from outside Israel, trying to attack civilian areas. And the Iron Dome, deflecting them, makes that sound. So I hear these booms, and it was pretty shocking. In our little peaceful town of Moda'in, the town in which the holiday of Hanukkah occurred. So Lisa's mom and her husband were staying with us. Her dad and his wife were staying in another place, but all in walking distance. So on the way to shul, we were all concerned, obviously, and we're wearing, the men are wearing yarmulkes, and so some obviously not religiously observant neighbors who were not wearing kippot came running over to us because they figured we were not listening to the radio. We didn't know what was going on. So they came over, they said, Tilim are falling. rockets are falling. And then they said to us, are you experienced at being here in wartime? You know, Mike, this is the kind of question that, you know, we're not accustomed to receiving, and it's a reality of life. So we said, no, yeah, this is the first time. So they said, if an alarm sounds, you have 90 seconds here in Modi'in for a rocket coming in from Gaza. You have 90 seconds to get to shelter. Now, 90 seconds is, they emphasize, is really a lot of time. It's not like if you're in Sderot, you have 15 seconds. So you have enough time to get to shelter. So don't panic, and go, they said, go knock on any door on the block. And people will open up, they know what's going on, they will invite you in, and they'll take you to their safe room. Over the past 15, 20 years, every dwelling built in Israel has a safe room. This is a room where if, God forbid, a rocket, to think this way, if a rocket strikes your dwelling, that room is safe from the effects of the rocket, from shrapnel coming from the rocket. And it's interesting, the cantor from Park Avenue Synagogue, Ozzy Schwartz, you know, made a comment. I saw a video of it. He made a comment that he was just there, he got back, and his nephew, he's Israeli, so his nephew said to him, yeah, Uncle Ozzy, where in your apartment in New York City is your safe room? Because the child couldn't imagine that people could actually live in a dwelling without a safe room from rockets. If you think how, you know, heartbreaking that is. So in any event, that's what they said to do. And we thanked them. We kept walking. We only lived a short distance to David and Lisa's house. We came into their house. It turns out that the shul for Simchas Torah had been canceled because with rockets coming down, they weren't prepared. Simchas Torah is a lot of people, and they didn't have enough shelter if the alarm goes off to shelter 500 people. So shul was called off. When shul was called off, and this happened for the remainder of the time that we were there, unless you had a shul to go to with a large shelter, you went to daven at what is affectionately called a street shul. What does a street shul mean? It means that out on the block, I mean, there are a lot of people who know how to lead the service and everything, and there are Torah scrolls around, that you have a minyan, which people were doing during COVID. Interestingly, COVID gave you the practice because you didn't want to go inside, so this was outside. So you have a minyan on the street, essentially, but you do it right near the apartments in that section. The apartments have garages for cars underneath the apartments, and the garages have no windows. So if the alarm goes off, you can go deep into the garage area, and it's safe. So in any event, there was a street shul. We were in David and Lisa's house. We weren't going anywhere. There was too much uncertainty with rockets falling. And we were there, and an alarm sounded. And once the alarm sounded, all of us, again, 90 seconds was adequate time. We went into the safe room. You stay in the safe room after the alarm goes off for another 10 minutes or so because, you know, there could be, you know, shrapnel, etc. And that's where we spent the rest of Simchas Torah, which is, now, interestingly, and again, it's what we were dealing with, the town of Modi'in in the subsequent 3 weeks was relatively spared of rockets. Relatively spared, meaning we only went into a safe room once. There was a rocket and the alarm went off. Another time in a different part of Modi'in where friends of ours were driving to one of the little malls in Modi'in, and the alarm went off in that area, And if you're in your car, what you have to do is you have to get out of your car. You don't want to be near a car. If a rocket hits a car, it blows up. So you have to get out of your car, and you have to move away from the car, lie down on the ground, face down with your head covered. And I mean, it's jarring. So they experienced that. We didn't have. Now, the reason why there's so few rockets in Modi'in, unlike so many other places, is that when the Hamas terrorists are shooting rockets intentionally into civilian areas, they only shoot into civilian areas. Now, that's a war crime, but they only shoot into civilian areas. When they shoot into civilian areas, their goal is to harm Jewish civilians. So, and they don't have very accurate rockets. So if they shoot into the Tel Aviv area and they don't hit the specific area they wanted to hit, they hit suburban Tel Aviv, also a Jewish area. If they shoot into Modi'in, the neighbors of Modi'in are Arab villages. So they didn't want to do that. So Modi'in, surprisingly, was spared. But it did, the relative safety of Modi'in did drive home an important point to folks who live there. The point is that in 2001, under international pressure, Israel reluctantly, without a peace treaty, withdrew unilaterally from southern Lebanon. And the United Nations promised that after the war that had been there, that Hezbollah would never again amass a couple thousand rockets poised at Israel. And the UN peacekeeping force would make sure that that was the case. And they kept their word, because here in 2023, they don't have a couple thousand rockets. They have 150,000 rockets. It's kosher, it's under UN supervision. I mean, it's an unbelievable thing, which meant because Israel unilaterally pulled out from, without a peace treaty, pulled out from southern Lebanon, the north of Israel lives in great jeopardy. And right now, between the south and the north, there are 300,000 displaced Israelis in the center of the country, which we'll come back to. And the same thing was in the south, that Prime Minister Ariel Sharon decided in 2005 to unilaterally withdraw from Gaza and to uproot all of the settlements in Gaza, 8,000 people, because he assumed, and President Bush, that's Bush number 2, assumed that if you give the Palestinian Authority a place to govern, take care of people's lives, with all the infrastructure that the settlements had created, and with $500 million that was raised by Jewish philanthropists, they would rise to the occasion and put aside warlike behavior and build a thriving society. So instead of that, within 2 years, Hamas had a violent coup. They took over from the Palestinian Authority, and there have been 3 wars since, with constant shooting of rockets and terror tunnels, and now these hand gliders and drones trying to kill as many people as possible. So the point is that for people living in the center of the country, like Modi'in, the thought of unilaterally pulling out without a peace treaty from the West Bank, everybody knows what would happen. It would be what happened in the south. It would be what happened in the north. But then when the people from the south and the people from the north are seeking shelter, there's nowhere to go. The whole country would be under the threat of attack. Now, the fear we had about rockets turned out to be a camouflage. That what Hamas did with the rockets, they shot a lot of rockets that morning, but that was to distract people. Because the real shock was that they had succeeded, and there'll be an investigation of Israeli intelligence and security, how this could have possibly happened. But thousands of Hamas terrorists, thousands of Hamas terrorists, followed by thousands of Gaza civilians who were all assigned to come in and kill every single person that they met. They were ecumenical. They killed Jews, they killed Muslims, they killed Christians, they killed Hindus, they killed Sikhs. They just had a bloodlust. And so this is something we never in a million years anticipated. And in the evening, we began to find out the truth. That day, 1,400 people were murdered. It's more than that, because there are some 200 people whose bodies haven't been identified, given the mutilation of the bodies and the torture and stuff. So it's really 1,600 plus the probably 250 hostages from 28 countries, including US citizens, who were taken to wherever Hamas has them. They built tunnels under the Gaza city that are equivalent to the New York subway system. I mean, it's that extensive, that elaborate. There are motorized vehicles that can pass through. There are weapons being assembled. So it was a shock. Micha Goodman, who's kind of the public intellectual in the state of Israel these days, Micha Goodman said the following, because the army was just not ready for this, and it took 12 hours for the army to get there. He said for 12 hours, there was no IDF, Israel Defense Force, defending the folks. For 12 hours, the state of Israel's infrastructure was not there. So for 12 hours, he said, Israel's population saw what it is like to live in the violence of the Middle East with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and, et cetera, without an army in place, without a state in place. These are not nice people. I'm not even sure that they're human. It's the way they behaved, where they came in and they, it isn't polite to say in polite company to describe what they did, but it's a story like the Holocaust that we have to tell. They came in and they went into a music festival. It was a crunchy granola crowd. It was a peacenik crowd. It was an international crowd. It was young people who wanted to, promote peace and love throughout the world. And they came in there with machine guns. And they mowed people down like the Einsatzgruppen of the Nazis in World War II. And the people they didn't mow down, the young women, they violently raped to the point of breaking their pelvis. They tore bodies apart. They cut off heads. I mean, I don't go through all the details. The point is, it was the most barbaric, and they filmed it. They were proud of it. They rejoiced in it, and they shared it on social media with their followers. Gaza is divided into three parts of the population. You have Hamas, murderers. You have enablers, like the people, civilians who came in with Hamas to participate in this stuff. And then you have the innocent civilians who are being used as human shields, as part of the strategy. Try to get as many people killed as possible. The Hamas spokesman said, Israel provides, shelters to protect its population during wartime. You've received billions of dollars of international aid. Have you provided shelters? And they said, yeah, we provide shelters for our fighters. But we want our people to be exposed, because if they die, it's a great victory for us. I mean, it's, as they said, our enemy in Israel lauds life. We laud death. These people are, it's a perversion of Islam. The day of October 7th, the Jerusalem Jerusalem Post had an article. It said that the Global Imams Council, headquartered in Najaf, Iraq, consisting over 1,470 prominent Muslim imams and scholars from all Islamic denominations and sects, condemned in the strongest possible terms the barbaric and terrorist acts committed by Hamas against Jewish, Christian, and Muslim civilians in the Jewish state. In other words, they are distorting Islam. This is not Islam. These guys are Islam. And our friends, Peace Island Institute, that's Islam. But the point is that for 12 hours, as Ike Eisenhower, when he was general in World War II, and he presided over the liberation of the death camps, he said, you know, it's very important that we copiously document what we see, because there will be people in the not too distant future who will say it didn't happen. And we already have people saying October 7th didn't happen. We have people saying, yeah, it's an exaggeration, it didn't occur, etc. And so Israel brought in dozens of international journalists, and they showed them, the journalists could hardly watch it, they showed them a 45-minute video that was of stuff taken by the Hamas murderers, these barbarians with their cameras, and they showed them, as Martha McCallum wrote on social media, there are no words to explain. Watching this is to witness the darkest evil that possibly can exist. Israeli Major General Mickey Edelstein said, "We felt it necessary to show this footage to the journalists so they understand the evil that we're up against. We, Israel, have tried everything with regard to Gaza. Let's be clear. Gaza was never ruled, there was no sovereignty for the local people in Gaza, ever. And it was the Turks, and then the British, and then the Egyptians from 1948. And when Israel, because Egypt and Syria, etc., rounded up their armies and closed the Straits of Tiran, an act of war in the War of 67, Israel gained control of Gaza. Israel didn't want Gaza. So Israel said to Egypt, if you can make a peace treaty with us, we'll pull out of Gaza and the Sinai Desert. And Egypt, with the other Arab nations at the time, said no negotiations, no peace, no recognition. So Israel tried approach number 2. Let's improve the lives of the people in Gaza, and maybe they will have a peaceful attitude towards us. And so when they came in, life expectancy in Gaza was age 42. Medical care was virtually non-existent. Rampant disease. Babies died in infancy. Mothers died in pregnancy. So Israel brought in modern medical care, and over the decades increased life expectancy from 42 to 75. When Israel came in under Egypt, there was universal illiteracy. The people didn't know how to read, to write, etc. Israel established schools, universal literacy, and 7 universities that became hotbeds for Arab nationalism, unfortunately. When Israel came in, unemployment rate was nearly 50%. Israel created all kinds of opportunities to work in Israel and in the Gaza Strip. So Israel said, okay, we're doing all this improvement of life. The people are going to like us better. We brought in purified water. We brought in electricity. We brought in fuel. All these things that were not present before. Well, by the late 1980s, given the opportunity, the people in Gaza had the first, it was called Intifada, which was a violent uprising against Israel. And the group that was behind it announced itself as Hamas. The word Hamas, when you're reading the Parshat Noach, it says God had created the world by taking primal chaos and putting chaos into cosmos, into order. But after 10 generations, the world descended back into chaos. The word for chaos, uncontrolled violence, disaster in interpersonal relations, the Hebrew word is Hamas. And that's what happened. So Hamas took over a military role in 1988. In 1993, Israel said, you know, we should try a different approach towards the Palestinians. And Prime Minister Rabbi, we all remember this, shook hands with Arafat on the step, on the lawn of the White House. And Rabbi, and I remember I was part of a delegation, meeting with him in 1994. He said, we're going to try the Gaza first approach, because Gaza is more easy it's further from Israeli population centers. We'll give autonomy to the Palestinians in Gaza, and then they will be peaceful, and they'll want to improve life for their people. So they gained autonomy, and gradually you had more and more homicide bombings, and you had more and more terrorist attacks. So that didn't work. And then the next effort was under Sharon, when Sharon, as I mentioned, unilaterally pulled out of Gaza. Okay, this time we're not going to give autonomy, we'll give full sovereignty to the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority, they came in and they tried, but there was a violent coup and Hamas took over. And once Hamas took over, we've had 15 years of attacks and assaults and wars, etc. And now this October 7th pogrom, this October 7th most violent day of attacks on Jews with brutality only the Nazis and ISIS could rival, that they created a sense in Israel today that we can't possibly go on by having Hamas in control next door. We don't want to occupy Gaza. We don't want to conquer Gaza. We don't want to control it. But we can have Hamas in control next door. And that's what this unfortunate war is all about. Now, in addition to this, we have a couple of things that were beautiful. And amidst the tragedy and the terror, we should talk about those things that are beautiful. One thing has been the outpouring of concern, friendship, support by so many of our friends, so many of our associates, etc. I mean, for me, getting communication from my buddy Father Anthony, from Reverend Marquet, from Mayor Joe Alessi, who had been the mayor of North Caldwell, with whom I did a lot of work over the years, and other civic people, was unbelievably meaningful to get communication from all of our neighbors on our block, not Jewish folks, who were so concerned about us, writing to us, WhatsApping us, getting, obviously, communication from all the clergy here, as well as from our many friends in the congregation. All of this, and the presence of WEMA at this evening, means so very much. Human contact at times of distress, at times of heartache, at times of shock, at times of rage, is incredibly important. We also, on the positive side, had pride. Everybody in Israel had pride at the resilience that has been shown by the people of Israel. People of Israel, I mean all Israeli citizens. That's Israeli Jews, Israeli Arabs, Israeli Bedouins, Israeli Druze, Israeli Christians, etc. That amazing response by every sector of the society, because everybody understands more than ever before that Hamas intends to kill everybody. And their leader has said, we will do this again and again. They're not embarrassed. We will do this again and again and again until we've killed everybody. So even before the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, got together and came to the rescue. In the 12 hours before that happened, there were the arrival of all kinds of ad hoc groups who saved thousands of people on that border area. Remember, the border area was filled with Jews on the left, Jews who were seeking to establish peace with the Arabs of Gaza, Jews who were taking sick children to the hospitals of Hadassah, etc., Jews who were employing Arabs, 20,000 Arabs coming in every day for work from Gaza, who it turns out in many cases mapped out each dwelling in which they were in so that Hamas would know exactly where the people were to murder them. But there were incredible examples of heroism in those 12 hours. There's a retired general, you may have read about Noam Tivon. Anybody hear about Noam Tivon? I was honored to lead a global Zoom meeting for our movement worldwide with Noam Tivon. Noam Tivon is a retired brigadier general in his 60s, lives in Tel Aviv. His son is a reporter for Haaretz, Israel's left-wing paper. His son called him, living down in one of those kibbutzim that were doing things to bring peace with the Arab neighbors. He called him, he and his wife and 2 children were boarded up in their safe room. And he called his father because the terrorists are shooting at the building and they're going to burn them out, etc. And Noam Tivon immediately jumped into a car, and he's a retired brigadier general. So he got down near the area, and anywhere he saw a soldier, he ordered the soldier to come with him, and they weren't going to say no to him. And he went in and he saved his family. You had the case of Inbar Lieberman, age 25, security coordinator of kibbutz Nir Am, who rallied fellow kibbutzniks to fend off and kill 24 advancing Hamas murderers. In the process, she, female soldier, saved the lives of her neighbors and friends. Omri Bonim, age 41, and 5 other people fought off dozens of terrorists for hours until IDF help arrived. They made the marauders think there were more defenders than there actually were. In other words, they would run from this side to that side, whatever. There were all these stories of heroism, and we're finding out more and more. The ad hoc. Remember those protest marches that were going on every Saturday night for 39 weeks? Well, those marches, which everybody assumed, certainly Hamas assumed, had weakened the solidarity in the country. Everybody assumed that. Well, you know what? Once everybody saw what had occurred, those organized groups, those networks, sprung into action to save people. So a group called Brothers in Arms that had been out there leading the protests and threatening not to show up for reserve duty, they spontaneously grabbed guns and pistols and weapons, they improvised, and they saved refugees coming out of the slaughterhouse. When Gil Troy, columnist, wrote, when Hamas attacked, when the expected security systems had failed, ironically, one of the most effective networks were battle-hardened veterans who had organized themselves because of the judicial chaos. Similarly, the so-called student protest movement, who had organized themselves to protest against the judicial overhaul, gathered together to provide equipment for the soldiers when they came, provide psychological care for the traumatized, provide babysitting, childcare, ran day camps as needed, and helped to host families, arrange for hosting of families in the north and from the north and the south. All these people sprang into action like instantaneously. It was a miracle. All these people who were so divided now became unified more than ever before because everybody knew Jews, Muslims, Druze, Bedouins, Christians, we're all in this together. This is a battle to save civilization. In addition to that, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, which was worried that people wouldn't show up for reserve duty or when called, So they called up 100% of when they needed 70% in terms of numbers of reserves being called up. They didn't get the 100%. They got 150%. People were doing whatever they could to get there. People came back to Israel by the tens of thousands to serve in their military units. High-tech global Israeli leaders diverted company resources to benefit the survivors of the massacre in the south and to provide logistical assistance to the soldiers. Keep in mind, the country was not prepared adequate provisions, adequate food, adequate rations for so many soldiers. And so everywhere you went, people were preparing meals. Our neighborhood was preparing 25,000 meals a day for the war front that would be transported on. Religious responses abounded. The rabbi of David and Lisa's shul. Rabbis, unfortunately, are not present in too many synagogues in Israel. It's a whole other story of the Honey Foundation, of the Lipsies, etc. But where rabbis are present, like the rabbi of David and Lisa's shul, they were pivotal. They gave instructions that all these people had died, when funerals are starting to occur, and now funerals of soldiers, etc., the mitzvah is levaya, is to accompany the family. Now, their family aren't going to be able to get there because of the war going on, and their buddies can't always get there because they're in the army. So if you hear of a funeral, go. You don't have to know the people, but you have to accompany them. You have to be with them. And, on the WhatsApp, David called me, Dad, we got a WhatsApp message that there's a shiva in the neighborhood. They don't have enough people for mincha. Now, I couldn't go because I was leading the Noam Tivon Zoom, but David went. I asked him later, how did it go? He said, well, it went fine, but I couldn't get in. 300 people showed up. And so it was with weddings. You don't cancel a wedding. People went to the kotel to get married without any of their relatives. And people came, l'sameach chatan v'kala, in the midst of warfare. And every family, everywhere you met, people were doing stuff. My Rita was purchased food to be transported to the front, and she baked and had the two littlest of our grandchildren, wrap them and put fun things on them. Our grandson, age 17, and his friends looked for vacant apartments in the neighborhood and put on WhatsApp, we need X, Y, and Z types of furniture to make that apartment habitable for people who are homeless right now from the south and the north, and they enabled people to have a place to go. They also found that they realized there weren't enough Israeli flags around. They found a donor who gave them $5,000, and they bought flags and they put them everywhere in the neighborhood. And everywhere you go, you would see Am Yisrael Chai, people of Israel live, and you would see B'yachad Ninatzeach. If we stay in solidarity, we will win. And everybody is determined, because we have no choice. As Golda Meir was famous for saying to Joe Biden when he was a young senator, she said to him, we have a secret weapon. The secret weapon is we have nowhere else to go. So we have to win. And so you had all this positive stuff. In addition, you have people pondering, how could this have happened? Yair Lapid, who is, the head of the opposition, parliament, etc. In 2014, he, as a son of a German Jewish immigrant who survived the Holocaust, he spoke at the March of the Living, 2014. And he said, Germany was a civilized country, and then the Holocaust happened. What is it that could possibly have transformed human beings into doing what the Nazis did? And he said the only thing that can possibly explain it is that the Nazi regime educated people to the dehumanization of the Jew. The Jew is not human. And since the Jew is not human, you can do anything to a Jew. And that is what Hamas did. Hamas is teaching through their schools, through their camps, summer camps, through their youth movements, etc., has been teaching their people that the Jew is not human. The Jew is the source of all evil in the world. The Jew is behind the scenes manipulating the media, the banks, everything that exists. The Jews caused the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, World War I, World War II, everything in the world, it's all the Jews because the Jews are satanic, the Jews are sinister. Now, if you cause the Jew to be dehumanized to that point, then, as people are coming to realize, then if you attack Jews in the most brutal of fashions, you can do it because they're not people. And so my point is, and with this I'll stop and take a couple of questions if people want questions. I could go on with a lot more stuff, but the reality is that Israel and the world needs to win this battle of civilization, needs to dislodge Hamas and to have a humane government govern the Palestinians in Gaza. But the government is not enough. There also has to be a humane curriculum in the schools. There has to be humane content in the youth movements. There has to be humane teaching in the summer camps. There has to be a re-education of a Nazified society. Since Hamas took over in 2007, that's what they have done to the young people of Gaza. That has to be reversed. So, okay, Steve Kamenetsky had submitted a question. The question was, given all the publicity of the death of civilians and children and stuff in Gaza, and that's a whole other story about the way the media are reporting the events. We saw this with the hospital bombing. The hospital bombing was initially reported as Israel bombed a major hospital and 500 plus people were killed. Turns out the bomb was an errant bomb set off by Islamic Jihad, one of Hamas's allies, and it was not set off by Israel, and it didn't hit the hospital. It hit the parking lot next to the hospital, and it didn't kill 500 people. It did kill about 50 people, and that's tragic. But my point is that the accuracy, they're reporting about all these deaths, and there are deaths, and it's terrible, using people as human shields. But they don't, the source of the information is the health ministry in Gaza, which is the propaganda arm of Hamas. It's not a health ministry. And they don't make a distinction between the deaths of terrorists and the deaths of civilians. And they don't make a distinction between people who were killed by errant missiles that were sent by Islamic Jihad and Hamas. 40% of them don't reach beyond Gaza, but strike things in Gaza, and Israeli strikes. And they don't make a distinction between people right now who have died of natural causes and people who died in the conflict. It's all part of the strategy. So I'm not going to get to that right now. But Steve asked whether with all that, we should worry about retaliation by Hamas. In other words, will they take vengeance? And I don't know the mindset of Hamas, other than the fact that they try, and we should believe them, every day to kill as many people as possible, and they don't need extra motivation to do that. That's what they're all about. That's their raison d'etre. Okay, we'll take a couple of questions. Go. Sure, so you can call on people. Yeah. Okay, Diane?
There's many Arabs living within Israel. What was the atmosphere or the actions? Can you describe what was going on with the Israeli Arabs towards the Jewish Israelis at the time all of this has been happening?
Look, the Israeli Arabs, first of all, there have been many discussions about a peace process where the triangle, that's the largest collection of Israeli Arabs in pre-67 Israel, it's in the Galilee, have a land swap. In other words, swap those almost 100% Arab areas of Israel for settlements in the West Bank. It's a similar amount of territory. The people who are most bitterly, unalterably opposed to that are Israeli Arabs. Because although, given the fact that Israel and the Arab states have been at war forever, there is tension towards Israeli Arabs at certain times. They recognize that they are citizens with rights and employment and education and benefits, and the last thing in the world they would want would be to give all that up and to live under the dictatorial rule of what would be a Palestinian state. So there's no question they appreciate Israel and being Israeli citizens. There have been times, like the war in 2021 with Gaza. I mean, you have these wars, unfortunately, all the time. That's what has to stop. That's why you can't have Hamas there. Where the war was over destroying the tunnels. And that was a finite goal, destroy the attack tunnels. Now that it's clear you have to destroy the infrastructure of Hamas. You can't have them governing anymore. That war, there were some Israeli Arabs who said, the tunnels are a threat, but you shouldn't go to war over it. And you had battles going on between right-wing Israeli Jews and left-wing Israeli Arabs. It was a tense time in certain cities, in Ramla, Lod, etc. This is not the case now, because everybody from every sector of Israeli society knows full well that what Hamas did on October 7th was, as I said, ecumenical. They killed everybody they could get their hands on. They took as hostage from every nation in the world. They are merciless, and everybody is scared to death that they will still be in power. The Israeli Arabs are, volunteering to be support for the army. The Druze serve in the army, the Bedouins serve in the army. So this has been the most unified the country has ever been, including the Arabs of Israel, who are 20% of the country. Dahlia.
I wonder if you could talk about the hostages for a minute.
Yeah.
Periodically we hear different things. Occasionally Hamas said that an Israeli bomb killed some hostages. The released hostages, I believe, indicated that they were not badly treated. At least the ones that they released were healthy. Do you have any information we don't get about the hostages?
Look, the situation with first of all, the number of hostages, we don't know. It's more than 245 because we have 200 people whose whereabouts we don't know. So it's more than that. Number two is Hamas, this is propaganda. The two women who said they weren't so badly treated, both of them have husbands who are still hostages. They were told what to say. And, if my spouse were still a hostage, I would say whatever, whatever they tell me to say. Don't believe a word of what they said. So we don't know. Now, there's talk that the Hamas side is offering, it's only talk, they're offering to release hostages who are not Israelis in exchange for a ceasefire. Because a ceasefire means to rearm, to extend the war, to siphon off humanitarian aid without supervision, and so they obviously want that. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but the negotiations are sensitive. I mean, the sad thing is, we remember when Israel traded over 1,000 so-called security prisoners, that's people with blood on their hands, for Gilad Shalit, for one soldier. Among the people who were released are the people who planned October 7th. In other words, releasing those people there's a direct link between that and the tragedy. So Israeli society is very conscious of that. So it's a very complicated. Also, there's so many hostages of so many ages, and the infrastructure of Hamas's tunnels are so intricate and deep, we don't really know. So anybody who tells you they know, they don't know. Dahlia? Mm-hmm.
And I sit and I listen to you and I think to myself, this is a solution. This is a solution. This is not a solution. This is a pipe dream. So, we all are looking to each other and we're looking for answers. And there are attacking. Because nobody knows how this is going to end because you'll be able to find out.
Okay, thank you, Dahlia. Thank you. Father Anthony. Yes.
How can religious leadership play a central role? Once again, you bring so eloquently about what the Catholic community has done in order to facilitate the awareness of anti-Semitism. I was online the other day with Rabbi Skorka, who said no anti-Semitism, no Islamophobia. So we have to work hard in all this. What can we do? How does particularly the Catholic respond that has such a peace tradition that maybe can mediate? What can we do?
My dear friend, that is a hugely important question. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ready for that. In other words, I hope, I pray, that the evil force that Hamas will be dislodged soon. Certainly Israel, it's slow, but they're making major progress. If they can dislodge, as President Biden has said, as Anthony Blinken has said, they can dislodge Hamas. Once they dislodge Hamas, then it's the time for a meaningful bringing together of people of goodwill, of all faiths, etc. It's not in the interest of the innocent civilians of Gaza, and certainly not of Israel, to have this situation of an ever-accelerating war every 2 years, with more and more advanced weaponry, with more and more prodding by Iran. It's just not, it's not working. So hopefully, I think Iran is asking for a ceasefire. That's a good sign. Not because Israel's going to do it, but why are they asking for a ceasefire? Because their people in the militant, horrible ranks of Hamas are losing. That's why they want a ceasefire. If we can just dislodge them and have a suitable, appropriate Arab government in Gaza, then your question is right on target. But right now, it's just not, it isn't viable until that happens, and hopefully it'll happen soon, God willing. Bert.
What is going to happen to
Look, there are very few things other than dislodging Hamas about which the citizenry of Israel are as unified about as this is the end of Netanyahu. That he has been, he served for a bunch of years very well. He served poorly during the judicial overhaul stuff. He's been a disaster here. I mean, it's the first time in Israel's history where you had a war where the prime minister doesn't appear among the troops because he's afraid they'll kill him. And he doesn't appear among the families. Like Israeli prime ministers would go to the house of Shiva of somebody who died in battle. He's afraid to do that because everybody blames him, and he's the only person among the entourage that doesn't take responsibility. Everybody else does. Herzi Halevi, the head of the IDF, responsibility. The head of the Shin Bet, responsibility. Head of Mossad, everybody takes responsibility except for him. Gallant, the defense minister, they all accept responsibility, but not him. So he's done. He's done, and there's an opportunity for new leadership, long overdue. Israel should have term limits. So, yes, Matt. Look, it's a very important question. It's a whole other topic that I could address, but the bottom line is the people who are the perpetrators of anti-Semitism are not persuadable to act like, those are not the people you can persuade. Unfortunately, and it's something that really has to be looked into, you have a lot of people, foreign students on student visas who are here to do exactly what they're doing. And when they are chanting things like, from the river to the sea, that is a code word, not for a two-state solution, not for peace, but for the eradication of the state of Israel and the death of every Jew in the state of Israel. So, now there are people joining them who don't really understand what the issues are, but that's not a persuadable group. Once this is resolved, God willing, by Hamas stepping down, then the atmosphere on the campuses in particular, as well as other sectors of society, has to be explored, because the university administrations have allowed it to get out of hand. It's been getting out of hand for a long time. It's not fair. I mean, I'm very happy that I am not a student on campus. My alma mater, Cornell, embarrassed itself in the worst of ways, and I was president of Hillel there. And the place that they were told you have to stay away from is the kosher eating hall. That is a multicultural eating hall. In other words, because there are people who eat halal, and people, etc., who could eat kosher, it is the ultimate expression of peaceful coexistence. So, but that's going to have happen. We have let that get too far out of hand, and I am proud of the mega donors who have said to university presidents that, we were remiss. We allowed this. We didn't say enough to express our shock and dismay what's going on at these campuses, and we can't fund it anymore until you straighten it out. And it can be straightened out. There's a difference between freedom of speech and putting on a mask and saying, gas the Jews. That is different. That's not freedom of speech to talk about issues on campus. So yeah, that's gonna have to happen. Okay, we'll take one last question. Steve?
I know I've talked a lot. I'll try to be succinct. Yeah, two concerns. One, just from a practical matter, you keep talking about we have to dislodge Hamas. And how do you distinguish? Like, how do we know who's Hamas and who's just a civilian? That's point one. Point two,
No, quite the opposite. In other words, this war for Israel has nothing to do with vengeance. There is no Israeli parent who would risk the life of their child to get vengeance. Vengeance it's petty. This is safety. They're fighting for survival. And they want to minimize the death of civilians on the Gaza side, innocent civilians, and of Jewish soldiers. So they want to be very careful. Israel, that's not going to happen. And what will happen is Israelis, you know, the second intifada, where a couple thousand people died of suicide bombings, etc. The second intifada harmed the Israeli political left. In other words, the Labor Party and Meretz. Labor used to be the main party in Israel. They hardly made it into the Knesset in the last vote. This, at least in the short run, over the next 10, 12, 15 years, is going to push the country towards center. You're going to have, at most, center-left. The left is gone for the next 15 years. You'll have center-left, center, and center-right. The extreme right has been totally discredited by this whole thing. You know, Ben Gvir, who's the most extreme Knesset player in the history of the state, he was the one who pressured Netanyahu to move the IDF forces disproportionately into the West Bank, where the settlements are, and away from the Gaza envelope, leaving the Gaza envelope vulnerable to what happened. He's done. And nobody's going to vote for a party that he's associated with because of that. So you're going to see a shift. The extreme right, and I happen to think this is good for the society, the extreme right and the extreme left are going to be cooked for a while. And there'll be a coming together of the country with the center. The winner in all this politically is Benny Gantz, because Benny Gantz showed he was big enough, unlike Lapid, to join a unity government in the interests of the country. And he's a military guy, and he's a moderate guy. So we'll see, Steve. Okay, Cantor and Rabbi Blumenthal, if you folks can come up here, we're going to end with a little bit of prayer, not long prayer, but a little bit of prayer, the prayer for our country, the prayer for Israel. And here is a brief prayer by Rabbi Naomi Levy. Oh God, our strength and protection, we pray for the state of Israel in this devastating time of war, shock, and grief. Our hearts are breaking, O God. We pray for the lives of innocent civilians who have been heartlessly kidnapped by Hamas. Please bring them home and watch over them, O God. We pray for the lives of soldiers who have been taken captive. We pray for their safe return. Shelter them, God. We pray for the souls of any innocent victims on both sides who were brutally slaughtered. Send comfort and strength, O God, to the grieving. Send healing to the injured. Strength and wisdom to the doctors and nurses. Watch over them, O God. Hear their prayers. Bring peace, O God. Let it rain down from the heavens like a mighty storm. Let it wash away all hatred, bloodshed. God of the brokenhearted, God of the living and of the dead, gather the souls of the victims into your eternal shelter. This is the Shloshim. Right now it's the 30 days since October 7th. Let them find peace in your presence, O God. Their lives have ended, but their lights can never be extinguished. May they shine on us always and illuminate our way. Amen. Please rise for the prayer for America, then the state of Israel, and we'll end with Hatikvah.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings upon our country and upon the leaders of our nation and of our communities. Inspire all who lead and serve to conduct their affairs honorably. May peace and security, happiness and prosperity, right and freedom abide among us forever. Unite the inhabitants of our country, of all backgrounds and creeds, so that we may banish hatred and bigotry, safeguard our noblest ideals, and preserve those institutions which nurture liberty. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, helping to advance peace and freedom among all peoples and bringing closer to fulfillment the visions of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more, for the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness calm and confidence forever. Amen.
If you like, find a siddur near you, underneath the seats in front of you. In the back left cover, just inside the back left cover, is the prayer for the state of Israel. It's in English letters, it's in Hebrew letters. And as we learned from Rabbi David Golinkin, who was just here a few weeks ago to teach, we learned that this prayer was written by the grandfather of Bougie Herzog, the current president of the state of Israel. Together, Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, Hagen aleha be'evrat chasdecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha, Ushlach orecha v'amitecha lerashea, sareha v'yoatzeha, v'takanem be'etza tova milefanecha. חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם אלוהינו ישועה, ועטרת ניצחון תיאטרם, ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ואת אחינו, כל בית ישראל, פקוד נא בכל ארצות פזוריהם, ותוליכם מהרה קוממיות לציון עירך, ולירושלים משכן שמך, ככתוב בתורת משה עבדך, אם יהיה נידחך בקצה השמיים, משם יקבצך אדוני אלוהיך, ומשם ייקחך, והביאך אדוני אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר ירשו אבותיך, וירשת, ויחד לבבינו, לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולשמור את כל דברי תורתך, הופע בהגדר גאון עוזך על כל יושבי תבל ארצך, ואומר כל אשר נשמה באפו, אדוני אלוהי ישראל מלך, ומלכותו בכל משלה. אמן. סלע. כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפת מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Everybody just sit for one moment. An attitude of gratitude to Rabbi Alan Silverstein. Rabbi Silverstein is part of our Adult Ed series. The Case for Israel, he does every Wednesday, 10:30 to 11:30. Yes. So, no, 9 to 10 is the, wait, go. Yeah, 9, 10, right. 10:30 to 11:30 on Wednesdays on Zoom. He has his first class from 9:30 to 10:30 on Proverbs. And Thursday, right, say it again. Ethics. Yeah, I wrote this, I really did. Thursday is the Ethics War. It's all on Zoom. There are many of his students on the stream and in this room, but it's really worth your time to join Rabbi Silverstein on Zoom. It's through our, our website. The link is right on our calendar, so please look it up. That's one reminder for you. And again, one of the things that I think we learned tonight is to show up. The rally is next Tuesday. We are going to show up. You need to sign up by Thursday. If you're not able to go to the rally, another way to show up is to give tzedakah towards the cause. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Again, to Rabbi Silverstein and to our dear friends, Reverend Jeff Marquet and Father Anthony. It means the world that you are here tonight. Thank you. Everybody have a safe ride home. Thank you, Rob.